This is an excerpt from our What Comes Next mini film fest, hosted by Nick Davis, in which we discuss what happens after we die. Going from What Dreams May Come to the dreamy Mulholland Drive from 2001, directed by the famous, the infamous, the mysterious David Lynch.
R.I.P.
Starring Naomi Watts and Laura Herring, about a blonde Hollywood newcomer who meets an enigmatic brunette with amnesia in the surreal world of David Lynch. What made you put this movie on your list about the afterlife?
I think everyone in this movie is dead.
Okay, I have not heard this one. I went on a deep dive. This movie, I remember seeing it when I was younger and really being blown away by how dreamy it was and how trippy it was and how it made you feel disconnected and uncertain about what's going on. And I loved the ride. The second time, I was just super curious, and I needed answers. So I looked up different people's interpretations, different academic analyses of the movie. But this is one I haven't heard, that everybody's dead. Please, Mr. Davis.
First of all, I will say Mulholland Drive is and will always be my number one movie of all time. I think it's the greatest movie ever made.
It's on a lot of people's lists.
I love it. And I love it.
So you're in good company.
I love it because it's so bizarrely abstract. But the more I watch, I used to watch this movie when I was in film school, like every week, trying to figure it out. Like, I gotta figure it out. What's the mystery? What is it? What is he trying to do?
And David Lynch, in one of the DVD releases, put an insert in there called David Lynch's 10 Clues to Unlocking the Thrills of Mulholland Drive. He prompts you to answer some questions.
He didn't do that.
Did he not?
No. David Lynch would never give you a clue. He even said that, like, no, that's not me. Like, he would never.
Tricked.
He wants you to come up with your own interpretation. Like, I think that was the studio to try to get people to engage with the movie more because too many people were saying, like, I don't get it.
Another lie. Oh, no.
Yeah. David Lynch will never tell you about his movies. That is like a classic David Lynch. Like the movie is a piece of art. It is whatever you think it is.
You're blowing my mind right now because I feel so duped. I feel like I'm awakening to a different reality.
Yeah.
Fuck me, I'm an idiot.
But at the same time, those clues, I did the same. When I got the DVD, I looked at those clues and I was like, I'm going to watch it again and again and look at these clues and figure it out. And then I heard an interview with David Lynch. It's like, no, I didn't do that. Yeah. Like, oh, there you go, of course.
I used to, after seeing his movies like this and Lost Highway and Eraserhead, I started to be happy with a general idea that David Lynch tells stories and makes movies that are supposed to be like dreams, that use dream logic.
Yeah.
This viewing of Mulholland Drive kind of changed my opinion. That's more like it's he's an artist and he's doing art and he makes movies like they're mobiles, where a mobile moves around. It's not in any constant static state. You can't take a photograph of a mobile and say this is what it's supposed to look like. You're supposed to be able to see it through time and from different angles and appreciate it differently. So if the mobile is called Tiger, you should not at any point be able to put all the pieces in one position and see a tiger. It's supposed to be an abstract. So the idea that this movie is interpretable from different perspectives, I think, because it's not constructed to be appreciated like a normal movie.
Absolutely. I think that's nail on the head. And like in the mobile, like there are two sides and one side is black, just darkness. Yeah. It is the shadow side, and he captures the shadow side of things so beautifully. Like he can really take you to dark places while also bringing you to this really happy, light, like fluffy place in the, like within 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, I think one of his choices as an artist that lends himself to expressing the darker sides of things that I noticed, because I went on a kick trying to understand Mulholland Drive. I went back and watched a bunch of his other things and parts of Twin Peaks even, and realized he ignores a lot of conventions in movie making, and that is unsettling and makes it seem like unfamiliar as a movie audience, because you're expecting some constants to be true, some expectable progressions of ideas, and he just doesn't do it. Like, he almost does no exposition. Watching movies after watching a David Lynch movie, you realize how many times characters just stop and remind you what's happening in the movie or what they
Yeah.
just did 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And
it's getting worse and worse, too.
yeah, I do like Marvel movies, but I will admit that Marvel movie writing compels you to constantly be reminded about what's happening and where other characters are to keep like a bunch of different things. They want their mobile to be static so that you can understand
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
Or mobile. I don't know how to say that word.
We get what you're saying.
Thank you so much. So yeah, I think that's very unsettling, watching a movie where people just start talking and then sometimes just won't respond to one another.
Right, or just hold. He'll just hold on a scene, and people will play things out like in real time, and you're like, "Are they gonna cut? Like, what's going on?" It's like, no, we're just gonna stay here, and we're just gonna let you sit in this, and sit in this, and sit in this, and watch this person walk across a room, and then walk back across the room, just to see them walk across a room and respect the time. It's like, whew, David Lynch.
Yeah,
just doesn't do things like other people.
I see things like that, and it does put me on edge. I go, why is this happening? And I don't want to undermine anybody's experience of watching David Lynch movies by prompting them to say, sometimes there isn't a fucking reason. Sometimes I think he just wanted to keep that in there.
Yeah.
So in your interpretation, everyone's dead.
Everyone's dead.
Okay.
That's what I think. I think the way that it was going to script out as a TV show was you're going to see these individual stories of all these people who are stuck in purgatory, essentially, and a different version of purgatory. Mm-hmm. Because we have this Betty character, who's actually Diane, played by Naomi Watts, and she enters the movie blissful and happy, and I'm here in Hollywood and I'm going to accomplish my dreams, and she's with these two old people who are permanently smiling, even though sometimes they're creepily smiling. Mm-hmm. They're smiling. They're always smiling. So they're kind of like these angelic figures who are guiding her to this blissful bardo, as it were, blissful afterlife where she can replay her life.
This is not everyone's dead. This is the afterlife. Okay.
This is the afterlife. This is where you get to live out your dreams the way you intended, not the way they necessarily happened. Now, you're also seeing Justin Theroux's Adam, the director character, and you'll notice there are a lot of people in the Hollywood thing that are just dressed in black the whole time. And that black, I think, are the people who have sold their souls to get to the point where they're at. So they're living more in a hell type afterlife, where all of a sudden the director loses complete control. He has no control over his movie.
Something's been taken away from him. Something that he wants, that he would cling into recouping.
Exactly. And as he fights against it, it fights back really hard.
Yeah.
Like the cowboy and the knowing where he is and always kind of following along. And then there's the Camilla character, who has amnesia. She doesn't know really where she is. She's kind of more in that middle ground of purgatory, as set up kind of as a reminder to the Naomi Watts' character of like, there's some connection here. Like, we have some connection. I don't know what it is, but you're now fueling this heaven state as well, until they start digging in too deep and start to realize that their relationship isn't as heaven-like as they anticipated. It really has all these different complications, and the reality of what happened is all these different complications. So the way I see it is like, there's this guy named Daryl Anka. He channels this thing called Bashar.
Okay.
Bashar, it's a channeling thing. It's very popular. Really, I don't like channels most of the time. I think they're kind of, but this one's pretty good. He has this metaphor where he's like, imagine like 1 million projectors all playing the same movie, but they're all a little bit different. Depending on the decision you make, you can jump between all those different realities. All those different projectors represents a different reality. And I like to think Mulholland Drive is kind of these characters bouncing from different realities. Now, I think personally, because they're all dead and trying to figure out where they are. But what happens when you die? Do you just wake up in a different reality and keep playing it out, and you don't even realize that you died? I don't know.
I would prefer to think that much like in a dream, where you see somebody but you know they're really somebody else. You go into a room and it turns out to be it's a part of a different building, or it's in a completely different part of your memory. That it's not separate, intact, concrete multiverses. It's this big fluid thing of all time and all space kind of comes together, and the interconnectivity is fluid and weird, and you can be in two places at once.
Yeah, and it based on decisions,
or be two people
change
at
it.
once, yeah.
Yeah. And you're changing it, and that's the thing with Mulholland Drive is they're bouncing around in these realities, especially towards the end. All of a sudden, you're like, oh, now she's playing this character.
Right.
Oh, now she's kind of this character. Oh, now she's kind of this character. And you'll notice at the dinner scene at the end, they're all wearing black. And it's like, oh, there's something with black, red, and blue. That's what I determined. Like, the blue characters are kind of like the angelic, the red characters are kind of purgatory, and the black characters are kind of this hell, like, sold their soul like scenario.
Well, let's dive into that a little bit, because for a certain, blue plays a big role. The blue box, the blue moon key. There seems to be weird blue lampshades in places. Blue seems to be the color of Club Silencio and the mysterious woman in the box seat above the stage.
Yep, the blue hair. Yep.
So there's definitely, I think, if nothing else, that is a signal that color is being used consistently, and almost the same sort of tone of blue to kind of draw your eye, at least to a scene. And that's again why I like using the metaphor of a mobile for David Lynch's style, because I think sometimes he has the same thing mean different things, and different things mean the same thing. And so to find a consistent language is tricky with him. And personally,
interpretation.
Yeah, personally, I find that to be a fair artistic choice, but one that complicates communicating with your audience. And if all you're trying to communicate is think for yourself, interpret this, here's something I made, interpret it your own way, that's fine. But it does kind of make it frustrating for a lot of people to find what they're seeing comprehensible enough, unless you're primed in advance to say, go into this, you can make what you want out of it.
Yeah.
And with movies, we usually want to follow a narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. He looks at movies more as like a piece of abstract art.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why the weird way that Mulholland Drive was made, starting as a pilot and then
you touched on
having
that.
to turn into a movie. Yeah, it's like he was forced to go in there and be as David Lynch as he could be. Which
makes me kind of question how to interpret the movie, knowing kind of behind the scenes of the process that this was initially pitched as a 90-minute pilot to ABC, kind of like a Hollywood version of Twin Peaks. And he was actually going to bring in some actors from Twin Peaks to play the same roles. They could connect them. This was going to be a continuation of Twin Peaks. Knowing that and what sort of intentions he probably had, that some elements of the movie Mulholland Drive wouldn't have flown on a TV series, would have been too weird. So it makes me question if those were his intentions initially, or if those came up later when he had to salvage this pilot, which, by the way, I have seen. I found someplace online that has the pilot. And
oh, really?
I will send it to you after this, and I'll put a link to it in the description of this video. It really is the first 90 minutes of Mulholland Drive. It's almost exactly the same. The only thing that's missing is the scene with the guy in the diner talking to another guy about a dream, and then they walk out back and find the darkness, the homeless guy. That's the only thing that's not there.
Yeah, and I think what ties the movie together so well as well is kind of like, so they're all dead, and this homeless guy, this guy covered in grease,
which almost seems like
kind
an
of a
otherworldly
puppet
creature.
Master.
Well, yeah, it like maybe not a person, presented as a person.
Yeah. He's kind of like the presence that's just puppeteering these different realities for these people to experience.
Which also the cowboy seems like an otherworldly presence, and David Lynch has established that that's something he likes to do, because there's the mystery man in The Lost Highway who seems to be able to be in two places at once, and tell you what's already happened and what's going to happen. There's the whole behind the scenes, behind the curtain world of Twin Peaks, which the man from that world in Twin Peaks who can talk backwards is apparently the secret head of the production company.
Yeah, he's like the devil.
Yeah, who's just behind a glass wall. He only says 2 words and has a blue lamp on his desk. So yeah.
Yeah, it's it's usually those kinds of things in David Lynch's movies that represent evil or represent the kind of darker shadow side. Like he always kind of the man behind the curtain, the Oz character he's always manipulating something to mess with everyone else.
To me, that's almost Lovecraftian. It's kind of almost cosmic horror that there's some existence parallel but to the left or to the right, above, below ours, that can interact with us, we can interact with it, but doesn't play by our rules, doesn't have our same needs, wants, and boundaries.
The laws of reality don't apply. Like even those are kind of different. Yeah, it's fun.
Those 10 questions aren't even fucking real.
No, Lynch would never, ever, ever, ever give you any clue. That's just not his style. He is all about figure it out yourself. But there is something to it. Like the lamp does show up in 2 different places, in the beginning and in the end.
Sure.